Hey, how's it going, guys? Today's topic, I want to discuss how do I know when I have enough money for retirement? So, this is more geared for individuals nearing retirement. Maybe they're about 10 years out or they're currently retired. And this video is meant to really accomplish two major things. One is calculating what your income goal is, understanding it from a very simplistic standpoint, and then to more detailed standpoint, backing up into the math, and then creating effective strategies for closing your gap. To understand how much an individual needs for retirement and how to make sure they're not outliving their retirement savings and have to have significant lifestyle changes as they're going throughout retirement, you want to focus in on four main questions. These are the four most important questions that we unveil when dealing with clients. And the number one question is, how much money do I actually need? Number two is, how much money will I be receiving? Number three is, what assets can I use? And then number four, do I have the correct strategy to retire with confidence? That's what this entire process is all about. It's not about just having this large nest egg, but how can you effectively leverage that nest egg if needed to make sure that you're closing out any sort of income related gaps based on what your goal is versus what your income sources are. So what I'm going to do is help you guys create some sort of strategy where you could line up specific goals and making sure that you're not overreaching, either taking on too much risk, and you could glide into retirement with that confidence. So now that we understand what the questions are, what are some of these problems and what are the issues that individuals come into contact with when they run their well dry throughout retirement. And we've all either known of someone, whether that be a family member or friend, that has hit that retirement stage and they saw all this money sitting there. They saw their 401k account, their IRA account, their savings checking, whatever that was. And they thought, oh, great, this bucket of money is so big, I'm never going to be able to spend all of this. And what they do is they have a combination of risk and also lack of discipline, where they're pulling out monies too quickly, and then they're also risking the monies that they thought were going to be growing mixed with fees, and it comes out to be a complete disaster. So by understanding what these problems are and by itemizing what these problems are and coming up with different solutions, you could have that retirement success. You could have that bliss throughout retirement. The first thing, or really the two main areas that I want you to focus in on, is the difference between required expenses versus ancillary expenses. So the easiest way to separate what your required expenses are versus your ancillary expenses are is to think of it in the form of an acronym or a story. So required expenses, I want you to picture an individual that they worked their whole life, they just got to retirement, they gave in their notice, and that first morning they wake up, they realize they never have to work. They can now live every single day throughout retirement. Well, that individual, what is he going to do? He's going to go downstairs. He's going to pour himself a nice cup of coffee in a mug. So required expenses, think of the word mug. M-U-G. Stands for mortgage, utilities, and groceries. And there's different nuances to that. So mortgage, you could say, okay, well, I no longer have a mortgage. Yes, but you're still going to have property taxes and you're still going to have insurance. So make sure to add that expense in there for the year, divide that by 12, however you want to set that up, but make sure that you're accounting for that expense. Maybe you're going to only have your mortgage left for another 5 years, the first 5 years in retirement, and then that drops off. So make sure that you're incorporating that expense into whatever your budgeting analysis is. The U stands for utilities, pretty self-explanatory. Your water, your cell phone bill, your cable, different things that could be matched up regarding your utilities, every single month, every single year. And then G comes down to groceries. So, how much is it going to cost you to eat every month? Make sure that you're incorporating, what the cost of your groceries are. You could do that every week, multiply it by 4, or, do that every week, multiply it by 52, divide it by 12. So you understand exactly what that is every single month. And also, whenever you're going to calculate what your required expenses are, try to push that number up just a little bit. You want to pretty much overstretch that number so that you're planning for the worst. In reality, you're going to have more than enough to cover those required expenses. It's very important that you look at those required expenses as your baseline. Now, your required expenses are entirely different than your ancillary expenses. Ancillary expenses, I want you to think of the acronym of debt, DEBT. And that's exactly what's happening with ancillary related expenses. The D in debt, or for the ancillary purpose, is going to be dining out. Is it required that you're going to have to go out to a restaurant multiple times per week? Or can you downsize that a little bit? Do you have enough funds available to make sure that you could go out and kind of splurge and dine out once a week or multiple times per week? There's going to be a difference there between groceries and dining out. The E will stand for entertainment. Do you need to golf multiple times per week or multiple times per month? Or can you go and get your fill by only doing it, a couple of times, per month, or, maybe once per month? Other forms of entertainment, going to a concert, going to movies, do the little steps. Maybe get, early bird specials. Maybe go to movies during matinee times so that you're not paying full price. Whatever that little, cost difference is that you could save, you could still reap the benefits of paying for those ancillary expenses, but you're not over splurging. You're not paying way too much on those accounts. So that would be the E in debt. The B is for really typically the women, is going to be for beauty. How many times do you really have to get your hair done and get highlights, throughout retirement? How often do you need to purchase, new clothes or a new dress or whatever that is? So try to make sure that you're having a little bit of a chokehold on what those expenses are. And I laugh a little bit because obviously my wife has that large problem, and when I eventually retire, I know that is going to be a situation. And lastly, the T in the acronym of debt stands for travel expenses. How often do you need to travel? I understand when individuals, when they start hitting that retirement stage, they have these three main phases known as the go-go stage, the slow-go stage, and then the no-go stage. The go-go stage says, I really wanted to see Italy. I really want to see France. I really want to travel all across the country. Whatever that case is, maybe glide into that. Don't go so crazy right out the gate where you're now starting to accelerate the withdrawals on your accounts and creating an unsuccessful retirement. So once again, take a step back. Look at your expenses. Is it necessary? Are they required? Or are they ancillary? Think of required expenses under the acronym of MUG, like that individual that just retired, sitting down for his first cup of coffee, drinking from a mug. Think of ancillary expenses as debt. That's going to be something that's going to weigh you down. Debt, D-E-B-T. The remaining problems essentially fit into one another. The second problem is not using an income strategy. What happens is when an individual is working, they're accumulating their dollars. They're placing their monies aside in checking, savings, 401k, IRAs, Roth IRA accounts, trying to leverage different financial vehicles to really grow their accounts. What happens is when an individual hits their retirement stage, they need to shift that mindset from that accumulation phase into the preservation distribution phase. Because they're no longer able to add dollars to those buckets, they now have to create an effective strategy to remove dollars from those buckets, to siphon out those monies correctly. And individuals that mess this part up fall victim to something known as reverse dollar cost averaging. One thing is, with reverse dollar cost averaging, individuals are not adding monies into the bucket, they're now pulling the dollars out of the bucket. Then on top of it, they could be taking on the same amount of market risk that they were having during their accumulation phase, when that risk should be significantly reduced. And then on top of it, based on the sort of growth-related mechanisms that they're using, they could be paying very expensive fees, and those fees are adding additional negatives to the account. So the combination of pulling your monies from an account that could potentially go down, that has a massive amount of fees, can result in retirement failure. And this all comes down to not having a plan, is basically just having a portfolio. When an individual has accumulated their buckets, and now they start nearing that retirement stage, and now they're in retirement, you should have a plan and make sure that that plan is correlated to what your goals are, so that you're going to be eliminating financial stress. Make sure that you're creating income strategy, you're understanding what your expenses are, you're understanding what your income streams are at that point, what your gap is. If let's say there's a gap based on what you have coming into you for retirement, so now you have to rely on your assets, and then create effective income strategies to have a plan to make sure that you're accomplishing all those needs. So these are all the problems. What are some of the solutions, and what are the most effective solutions to make sure that you understand what is the retirement number that you need to hit, and how can you live every single day, without that financial stress, and live every day with retirement bliss from the date that you retire until, as morbid as it sounds, date of death. So the solutions come down to 3 simple steps. There's 3 main areas that every individual needs to figure out before they're retired, or if they're currently retired, how to stay retired forever. Number 1 is income. You need to make sure that whatever that number is that you comprise for your monthly income or for your annual income is being met. How are those income streams being met, or how is that income related expense being met? Well, the most common form is through Social Security income. When an individual hits at least age 62, they're eligible for Social Security income. So you could have a husband and wife, or basically married couple, that they're both collecting Social Security income. As a combination of that Social Security income greater than or equal to what their expenses are. If that answer is no, then they have to look at other sources. If one of those individuals were also receiving pension income, that's going to add to the lifetime income bucket. Unfortunately, majority of individuals are not offered pension plans. So therefore, they have to rely solely on their retirement savings and their remaining assets. With those remaining assets, what are some effective ways to make sure that you're creating a proper income strategy and you're optimizing each lane specific for that income strategy? So if we have an example where an individual has accumulated dollars of $1 million, rather than go and create one type of jack of all trades type strategy and say, I just want a combination of everything, income, emergency, and growth to all be covered, and just throw my money in the market. Well, once again, the problem is you're staying with that accumulation mindset, where you should now start to transition to that wealth preservation and distribution mindset. So in that example, use the smallest amount of dollars and only as much as necessary to accomplish that step 1 income need. Whatever you don't use up for that income need, now you have remaining in your emergency related need. Emergency, God forbid, if an emergency was to occur, you have monies that you could pull from. So rule of thumb is anywhere between about 6 to 12 months of what your expenses are, you should have into some sort of liquid savings that you could pull from at the drop of a hat. Income and emergency is so crucial because that's what creates your lifestyle. If you do not have an income strategy, you do not have an emergency strategy, your lifestyle is going to significantly suffer, and that could result in you having to go back to work, having to significantly downsize, or even worse, having to move in with family members and basically have that embarrassing situation happen because you ran your well dry. So make sure that you're using the smallest dollars only as much as necessary, create an effective income strategy. That could be anywhere from leveraging insurance-related products such as annuities to produce that type of personal pension aspect of lifetime income stream. That could be segmenting your dollars with different dividend-paying stocks and making sure that those dividends are giving you some sort of cash flow. You could be leveraging fixed-related accounts and living off the interest, or different accounts that will produce an interest and then use that interest to basically accomplish what that expense need is or what that expense gap is. So you could be utilizing rental properties and using the income from the rental properties to close up what that gap is. So there's a whole multitude of different things, but do not try to overstretch, and make sure simplicity is king when it comes to retirement planning. So use the smallest dollars only as much as necessary in step 1, smallest dollars only as much as necessary in step 2, and now you have all the remaining dollars left over in that step 3 growth/inflationary related bucket. The growth and inflationary bucket is really the cherry on top. Those are the monies that now you can mix and match, and you could have further dollars set aside for growth and for risk, because you do not have to rely on growing those dollars or creating or commingling those dollars for an effective income and emergency strategy, because you've already done so by steps 1 and 2. So in that $1 million example, maybe it will require $200,000 to be set aside into an IRA account, into a customized account that will produce the necessary income to close up that income gap. Maybe it will require $50,000 to close up the gap on that emergency related need and say, okay, I have to make sure my emergency needs are covered. And that might be something that's not built into the market. It might be a money market account or a savings checking account that's just basically sitting there and has no market risk, but you could pull from those monies to pay for whatever that expense is at that point. And so in that example, you now have 750,000 remaining for that growth and inflationary related bucket. So with this, maybe an individual wants to go and gamble on 250,000 and throw that entirely into the market, understanding that they're not going to fall victim to reverse dollar cost averaging with the money that they have in a growth related strategy, because they're not trying to rely on those monies for income. They could say, "Yep, you know what? The market did great this year. I'll sell off some of my positions and pay for the extra trip. Use really focus in on some of my ancillary needs to make sure that I'm not commingling the ancillary versus required related expenses." You could say, okay, I want to have another portion of dollars sitting in purely fixed accounts, take advantage of the current interest rate environment. You could leverage other strategies for that growth inflationary bucket to do Roth conversion strategies and tackle maybe some of the tax problems that you're going to be having in retirement, healthcare problems that you could be having in retirement, inheritance maximization that you want to make sure is accomplished as your ideal retirement needs, saying, I want to make sure I have more than enough income to live every single day with bliss and peace and happiness, but I also want to make sure my children, my grandchildren, that they're receiving something. They're receiving some sort of legacy from me. So I want to make sure to maximize that inheritance as well. So there's so many different ways on how to skin that cat on the growth and inflationary bucket need. And that's something that we help out individuals on a national basis, accomplish with these 3 things scenario. We get very detailed in that process. Really the major takeaway is just optimize each lane for that retirement success. Do not try to commingle a income related strategy with a growth strategy. If something's meant for growth and you really have to grow your monies, don't try to go and place it into an income producing product. And I see that problem constantly is individual will go and place their money in a variable annuity with an income rider that is growing with the market, but then it's losing with the market. It's getting hit with a bunch of fees, and then they have an income rider that has nothing to do with what their goal is. So all they're doing is just paying this really high cost, this really high fee to a financial advisor that is not giving them a pure benefit. So in something like that, they should be set up into something that will grow their monies most effectively, stripping away what those costs are and allowing to alleviate any sort of pressure against their account to grow in the most successful area. And vice versa. An individual should not be trying to leverage growth-related accounts for an income-related strategy. They should make sure to separate those lanes, to accomplish their goals successfully. So just make sure that you're optimizing each lane. You're taking the necessary steps to figure out what your number is, what are your income sources now, what is the gap, and then how to effectively create a plan, create a strategy, and optimize each lane so that you are using the smallest amount of dollars only as much as necessary to more of those boring lanes, the income and the emergency related lanes. But those lanes are the most necessary because that's what's accomplishing your lifestyle related need. If you mess that part up, it's going to have a significant impact of making you go back to work and really resulting in retirement failure. So I hope that makes sense. There's a multitude of different ways to do this. But at any point in time, if you did find value in this video and you want to speak with a specialist to figure out how to better your situation, get very detailed on your budgeting analysis, if you get very detailed on an effective strategy, simply call our 1-800 number up on the screen. It's 1-800-566-1002. I'm also going to have a link in the description of this video to schedule a call through our calendar link. And then you could also look at our other social media accounts to get further educated on different retirement planning topics. But I want to thank you once again for watching this video. Feel free to email us, to message us, and to subscribe to this channel so you have access to the most updated videos. Thank you so much, guys.